Hello. Well, welcome to Show Up GailNow Live. And I'm here today with a very special guest. Very excited because we met because of a global connection. And today I'm actually on the road. I'm not at my usual home base. So I hope that if anything freezes, please know that we are definitely live. And as I said, a very special guest. I was just on previously with Global Tea Break, and this is one of the founders. So very excited to have my very good friend all the way from Ireland.
Hey!
Hey!
How are you? How are you?
Oh, I am great. I'm so happy to have you here, Alan. And as you know, this is a new show that I have and really inspired by so many people thanks to my global connections, which I've met so many amazing people. So thank you for being here today. And we first met through Madeline Sklar's Twitter chat. So do you want to go back and maybe talk a little bit about how we first met in that first, I like to think that maybe it was an inspiration that we started. It was because of you and I that we started this tea break, or that you started the tea break.
So nothing to do with D. Scott Smith anyway, but we won't go into
Well,
that.
we'll get to him another time for sure, but yes. So I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, no, as I said, we met on Madeline's Twitter chat, and we just started connecting. And then I'm a firm believer, Gail, in okay, social media is great. Twitter chats are great. They're fantastic. But, it's the connections that you make out of them, and it's how you build on them, and not just saying, okay, just showing up every week on that Twitter chat and just chatting on the Twitter chat and then forgetting about the person. So my personal thing is, and I've always done, and I've encouraged people I train and people I talk to is to start building them connections. Start, talking to people and take it offline. Ted Rubin once said to me, he says, the best thing, and he said it many a time, is he says, start the connections online, bring them offline, but then bring them back online again. And I think that's so important. And that's similar to what we did is like we met on the Twitter chat. We had a good old chat on that. And then we just hooked up and said, right, let's jump on a Zoom. And what was only supposed to be I think it was about a 10-minute call was supposed to be. And, as they call these things, discovery calls. But we ended up, I think it was about 2 hours on that. And we just hit it off, So
Yes.
I think that's the beauty of what we do,
And I also connected up, I heard your interview with Making Tea through a podcast, and that's all that interconnection, podcasts, Twitter chats, jumping on a Zoom call. And really interesting what you said about, going from in-person to online, back to in-person, jumping on a Zoom call. I work in the area of manufacturing, and some of the salespeople, they're so used to being at trade shows and meeting people in person. And I often say that, going virtual is not, doesn't exclude being in person. It's another tool in your toolkit. Maybe talk a little bit, you've talked a little bit about this, maybe what are the tools in your toolkit? What are your favorite things that you use when it comes to the virtual world?
Well, I think, like when we look at it and just looking on that scenario where we're saying, have it online and then take it offline and bring it back online, because that's very important. Because what we do is we get to know the person online and we see what's going on in their world. And then when we do, whether we do meet in person or on a Zoom call or whatever format we're going to do is I know what's going on in Gail's world. I know that Gail is out cycling, and she's an avid cycler, and I can connect with you, and that, because you see me connecting with you and watching and being interested in what you're doing, and not just using you as another tool to get business or whatever. It's about building connections. And I've always said that about social media. Social is two words. It's social and it's media. And the social bit is the more important part. The media is just a tool that we use. But then taking it back online again is that, okay, so you meet the person, but you still know what's going on in their lives. You're still carrying on that conversation. So when you meet the next time in person, you have something to talk about. You're not going, well, what do I say to Gail this time? You know what's going on, and Gail knows what's going on in my life. So these are key parts, and that's what I always would say to people. when we talk about the toolkit, I believe in is like, if you find someone interesting online, find out more about them. And then when you find out more about them, don't just jump in and say, "Will you be my friend? Will you be my?" You know what I mean? Because that's what most people do. They go, "Oh, will you be my friend?" Like when they connect, I go, "No, it's the wrong way," because you wouldn't do it if you were at a networking meeting. You wouldn't automatically go up and say, "Oh, come
Mm-hmm.
on back to my house for tea. Come on back to my house for dinner." You'd say, "Well, how are you?" You connect with them, and you'd find out more about them. And I think that's very important. So it's following, understanding what this person is about, and then reaching out and connecting with them and building that conversation and building that relationship. And I will use that so many times in this conversation is relationships and building that trust factor, because you got to have that. And I think
Yeah.
that's how, like we're talking here about connecting globally. As you know, I'm in Ireland and you're in
Mhm.
Canada, and there's a huge space. The likelihood of me ever meeting you in person prior to social media
Oh, fine.
would have never happened. You know what I mean? Our
Right.
paths would have never crossed. Whereas social and anything digital has given us that opportunity. And as a good friend of mine used to always say, geography is history now, and it is,
Ah,
because we don't have to be in the same room as each other, but we can be as close to each other and know what's going on. So I think that's very important.
yes, and I want to do a shout out because we have Inger and Amanda Tento is commenting as well. And I want to say, Amanda, we crossed paths because of Global Tea Break, and actually, I reached out to her and done some work with her on her work with Google My Business. So there's a really good example of
Mm.
we would have never crossed paths if not. So there's almost, I always say it's like connecting the dots. So if Amanda goes back to Alan, goes back to Madeline Sklar, goes back. So there's this whole web that happens outside of, I mean, there's the World Wide Web, and then there's the web of social media that connects us. And I agree, Alan, what you were talking about in terms of, we would have likely never would have met in any other, like prior to using social media and using networking. And yet there's this connection that can have, like you said, we first met on a Twitter chat, which is typing, writing, right, online, and then went to the Zoom call. And that's what can be translated into the sales world or into recruiting world. You can, as I said, connect the dots.
Mm. And the
So
and that's the great thing about it is because before social and before anything that the world, I suppose, really took on the whole idea of digital is that
mm-hmm.
people and businesses were only doing business with people that were in their local community.
Yep.
Like we probably would speak about the global tea break, but like that is an example, because what's happened there is I've known there's a huge amount of people that are actually now starting to connect, and business is being done in the background, and it's not being done with people in the next city. It's been done globally across the world. That has, I think, has so much, you know, potential for growth for any business, that we don't have to necessarily be in the same area. We can be
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in the world, and we can use each other's services and refer people. And I think that's very important, as in a world of, I suppose, sales and marketing as much as anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And Amanda said something very true. She said it's amazing, and the pandemic has just accelerated. So as much as
Mhm.
the pandemic has been very difficult, I know myself, I love live events. I love meeting people in person. But through the pandemic, I've been able to actually expand my reach and meet people that I might not have if I was still staying more in my local community. So for me in my business, it has actually opened up doors globally, which
Yeah.
has been a real plus. And of course, Matt Goosey is here too. So Matt, I know through, let's see, Matt and I met through USA Manufacturing Hour Twitter chat, as well as a few other past people so that's sort of a separate web of people we've connected with. So he's here today, and he said, he asked, does this apply to cycling? I would say everything applies to cycling, or cycling applies to everything. So, and Matt, yes, I'm away right now and will be, brought my bike with me, will be out cycling. So, uh, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Global Tea Break, because this is an event once a month. and it has grown. Can you talk a little bit about where we talked at the start, how we met? And yes, you and D. Scott Smith definitely are the founders. Amazing the amount of work that you've done, the website you've created, the community that you've both created. And I will say this, as you have both been welcoming, inspirational, and so supportive to so many people, because you do those learning episodes with people too. So if you could talk maybe a bit about that and building connections globally.
Yeah, it's to be honest, yeah, like I obviously I work independently here, so I'm sitting in an office every day. Well, I have a home office here and so I'm sitting here every day. And for anyone who's a solo entrepreneur or who has works from home, they'll know it can be a very lonely thing. So I was actually, well, it's January of a year and a half ago. Um, Literally, I was sitting here one day and I just says, you know what, I just love to have a chat with someone, not about business, not about anything, not touting for business, not trying to build, collaborations, just to literally show up and just have a chat and have a
Mm-hmm.
coffee together. And of course, with us in Ireland, I said, well, everyone's having these coffee chats online, so I went, well, let's change it because Irish people drink a lot of tea. I just says, well, let's call it the tea break. So I just says, anyone who wants to have a cup of tea, please do get in contact with me. And I put it out on Twitter. And Scott, and I'd known Scott quite a long time before, and he says, yeah, I'll jump on. And we jumped on a Zoom call and we had a chat. And he says, this has been really good. And we both said at the same time, wouldn't this be great if we could expand this? And that's sort of how the Global Tea Break started. It literally was just built from me wanting to have a cup of tea or just having a chat with someone to building it out to something. And when we put it out the first time, I think we got 10 or 15 people on it who just jumped on. And I think I knew about five or six of them, and Scott knew about five or six, but it grew from there. And now we've created, as I always say, we've created a community that is just so powerful. It's so
Mm-hmm.
powerful and the people that are in it bring so much to the table. Like I see Jim Fuse is here, and like
Ah.
Jim is an absolute mine of information when it
Ah.
comes to stuff like this. And we have so many people like Jim and like Amanda that are coming in, and yourself, that are coming in and sharing their expertise and not looking for anything in return.
Mm-mm.
They're looking to build communities and help each other and and come up with solutions and understand. And to be honest with you, just to be human. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the key to it, you know?
You know what? That is so true. And Jim Fuse is one of the most generous,
Oh,
supportive people. I cannot say enough good about him. He's the reason I'm probably doing the live streaming, because he first told me about StreamYard. I've watched him on, and Tim Stone as well. So Jim and Tim show, and now Jim is doing with Chris Stone, Dealcasters Live. I'll be posting some things later in the comments with some of these links, because these are people that, for anyone that is questioning about, should they do live, how to get into live streaming, even just doing video. My last show, I had Inger Van Roy on, who talked about, we talked about the power of video. But Jim has been a show producer for me, and anyone that needs a wonderful A+ show producer, Jim is someone you should reach out to. Today, for example, I'm doing some of the things behind the scenes, but when I've had him do some of my other projects, it's amazing to see the magic he can do. So, yeah, yay! You shout
yeah.
out to Jim. I also want to mention. So you mentioned that you knew Scott before. So how did you know? Did you know Scott from an online and in person? How did you guys know each other? I did not
He,
know that.
there was a social media summit that happened here
Ah,
in Dublin, and that's how I got to know Ted Rubin and Steve Dotto
ah,
and all these people. And Scott was one of the speakers at it as well, and we
wow.
ended up connecting. And like it's like like I was a huge fan of Ted Rubin, and like that, it was like um when I heard he was coming to Dublin, I said, "Oh, I have to go to that." And the bonus is that there was so many other amazing, incredible people that were at it, and ended up having a good, like, it's like when you meet your heroes. Like, I always remember Ted was in the room and he was standing behind me, and I'm saying, will I ask him for a selfie? Will I ask him for a selfie? And I can't do that. And then I turn around and I just says, oh, probably the chances of me getting to this close to him again is very slim. And I turned around and I says, Ted, can I have a selfie? And he jumped down, pulled his, literally put his arm around my shoulder and was talking to me. By the end of the conference, we're sitting at the back of the room, slagging off people and having a bit of fun with others. And Scott's in the middle of it, and we're reaching out and we're connected. And and in fairness, we have to give it also a shout out to everyone know her as the tweeting goddess, but Sam Kelly, Sam Kelly was the one who organized that and started so many fantastic relationships. So I sort of got to know Scott over that weekend, but then we kept that conversation going, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's about keeping that conversation going and not just going, okay, well, I met them and that was it. And so I think it's very important. So yeah, I've known Scott quite a long time now at this stage.
I did not know that. So you met him in person and then came over to the virtual world, right? Which is really fascinating. And I do know that you had Ted Rubin, who is, I love when I follow him on Instagram, and I love when he does his cooking and he eats vegan and he does out on his boat. I don't know. It's just, I feel sometimes it's a bit voyeuristic, but then I'm like, you know what? That's kind of social media. That's how you get to know. So I feel like if I met Ted, I know you're right. We'd have something to converse about as opposed to only talking about the work we do. I know him as a person, and that's really important to in the connecting world. And again, in for anyone that may be listening to from the world of manufacturing that I work in, the stories you're telling, Alan, are so important for people to hear outside of marketing, because if the people in manufacturing and even in retail and some of these other areas, if you can use what we're already doing and learning and realizing that's where the magic is, I would say that's where you have these connections that isn't about selling. So instead of pushing, virtual gives you a chance to get to know people, and you don't have to be trying to sell so hard. Because if you meet someone in person, like you said, you don't walk up to them and say, hi, do you want to buy my product? Well, or if you do, it's probably not going to be the most successful relationship. So
there's a huge part. There's a huge part in that is, and like we talk here about, we're talking about Ted, we're talking about Scott, people like that. But, this is where, it doesn't necessarily have to be the big names of social, or it doesn't have to be the big names out there. It can be the company that's down the road, the shop that's down the road, the person that's down the road that's going to, enrich your life, is going to enhance what you do, is going to help you, or is going to feel more connected. And like we spoke earlier on about the pandemic, and there was so much, I suppose people were having, issues when it comes to like loneliness and stuff like that, that with reaching out and using social media and connecting with people on the types of, say, Zoom, just to talk to someone and to connect with people. Like we did it when we were going through it. We hang around with about there's about 10 or 12 of us in groups, and what we done was, is because we couldn't meet in person, we used Zoom, and we just all jumped on, and we were all chatting, and it was great. Even though we weren't physically able to, hug each other or whatever, we still had that connection there. And I think it's about building connections, and it's about helping each other to help, because I think that's the most important part of this is we were talking, I was saying there earlier on about regards to meeting people. Like, and I always use the analogy when I'm doing any type of any training is I say, when you go online, you don't just automatically start selling, because you wouldn't do it in public. Like, I would not walk up in a network meeting and say, there's Gail, and just walk straight over to you and hand you a contract and say, sign that, will you?
Sign on the dotted line now.
Because I know exactly what you do, and you just throw it back at me and you'd walk away. So don't do that. you'd get to know me first before you'd say, well, look, would you be interested in talking about this? And most people are more comfortable that way. And I think this is what we've got to get back to. Like I talk about the psychology around social media. The psychology is that we have to be human.
Right.
Brian Kramer speaks about it all the time. Hashtag H to H, human to human
Mm,
interaction. And that's what it is, because we crave that, and we
yep.
get a lift from that, and it creates the dopamine in the brain, because all these different fantastic things that help us to connect,
Hmm.
because we have to stay connected.
And one of the things you touched upon, one of the other areas I work in is in mental health. So I do work with Canadian Mental Health Association
Mm,
locally in my community, and it is about, we've done some campaigns around, keeping connected. And even though you can't meet in person, and ideally we crave that as people, we want to get to know people in person, but the next best thing, if you can't do that, is this type of
yeah,
connection. And even what we're doing right now, going live, doing live streaming and seeing people are, in the comments connecting. By the way, Yvonne Redden said, great to see you both. Hi, Yvonne. I know you do work with Yvonne as well. Here's a comment Amanda Tento said, and I think this is my passion around, both curiosity as well as the power of connecting. And she said, think about all the people who wouldn't have met if you, Alan, and Scott hadn't met. That is mind blowing. And I agree, all because you made a connection with Scott. And from that, we now have all of these other
yeah,
connections that are connecting out. And that is what I often talk about in terms of, again, the power that can lead to both personal and professional connections. And it starts sometimes with a simple hello. If you don't know what to say hello.
yeah.
How are you? Start a simple conversation, and often it will flow from there.
I'll go even one better than that. Is just smile.
Ah, yes.
Just smile at someone.
Smile.
Give people the time of day, because if you give
Yep.
people the time of day, they will give it back to you. But you have to do it. You have to, and don't think. And I say this to all the time. Don't be afraid of it, because at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, most people are genuine, and if they talk back, if you send them a message, same when you're on social. Like,
Yep.
if someone says something nice, or they put out something good, or they put out something fantastic, it's about thanking that person. I put out a
Yep.
post the other day on LinkedIn, and it was about some child in Disneyland, and she was wearing the Daffy Duck, Donald Duck outfit. And she was like, and next thing, Donald Duck comes out, and he grabs her and he starts doing, and he brings her over. And it was so beautiful to see. And it's seen it through a child's eyes of just no fear, just happiness, pure
Yeah.
happiness. And it was that connection that they built. And I put it out on social media. I got so many replies from it. People just saying this would warm your heart, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
it's about, and it's saying, and we wouldn't have seen that if we didn't have the types of social media and stuff like that. But it is, as you say in the hashtag, and it's so true. It's show up and show
Sure.
up,
Yeah.
because you have to show up. I use the be social. You use how to show up. They blend so well together.
They do. Earlier today we had, as part of the Global Tea Break, Joseph McGuire was on there, and which,
Mm,
again, great. Another great part of the Global Tea Break is these types of teachings that we have, along with the breakout groups where you meet new people. But I found today so inspirational as well, because one of the things he said is what you said, is about the power of the smile. And sometimes when you enter a room, if you smile, it changes both your energy as well as the other people in the room.
yeah,
And sometimes, people say, well, is that fake? I go, well, you know what? If it changes your energy by a smile, because if, it's like when people wake up and they go, oh, it's going to be a crappy day. I always say, if you say it's going to be a crappy day, you're probably going to be right. But if you wake up and you say, it's going to be a great day, maybe you can shift that energy. And that's where a smile, yeah, I think that's really key. So
it's
thank you for giving that tip again. We need that reminder.
It is, and like as you say there, and that like I've a master's in NLP, neuro linguistic programming. So what it
Mm,
like that is when you wake up in the morning, like if you think about it, and you don't want to get into it because it's a whole different conversation, but it's if you wake up in the morning, you say, "I'm going to have a bad day." Your brain does not know left from right, good from right from wrong. What it knows is what you put into it. So if you put
mm-hmm.
in that information, that's the information that's going to come back out. So the
Yeah,
idea is if you're waking up in the morning saying today's going to be a good day, it will be a good day. Do you know
it
what I
will
mean?
be.
And that's the thing. It's about changing your state and changing
Yeah.
how you think about things and how you actually put everything into perspective, because I think they are the key points here, and that's one of the reasons why I studied the NLP is to understand how people think, and how to understand that is by understanding yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
So if you smile at someone, they're going to smile back at you, but you have to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't sit there if you can't sit there with a moody face on you and expect someone to be happy in front of you, because they're not going to be. Because if you're not, they're not.
All right. I often say this too. I say, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so much is in the power of mindset. And you're right. What I talk about is sign up, suit up, and show up, because showing up is so important. But those other first two steps to help you show up, right? So the sign up is all about mindset. How do we look at the world? How do we see things?
Mm.
And then suiting up is that's where you use curiosity and do your research. And then, part of us talking today is that you said yes when I asked you to come on here, right? Now I'm sure you're busy, you've got lots of things going on, but you said yes, right? And then the next thing is we did a quick backboard, but we already knew each other enough to kind of keep this conversation going. I'm sure we could speak for a very long time, but
Mm.
we're just wrapping up now. So, anything else that you want to say in terms of you want to share about Global Tea Break, or maybe a little bit? Why don't we talk a little bit about? So you have Kompass Media as well. So, and I know you're doing some collaboration work. So let's talk just when we finalize, because I think I'm also a big fan of collaboration and teamwork. So, can you talk a little bit of what you're doing in terms of collaboration with Kompass Media?
Yeah, well, so like obviously for the last number of years I've been sort of working on my own and building the business, and it's been great, and it's gone well, and we have to say that. But like everything in life, you have to expand, you have to look, you have to understand and say, right, well, if I want this to grow, or I want things to happen, I need to start connecting, and I need to start building relationships. And I've been so blessed to work with, and I have to say it because she's here, Yvonne. But I've been so blessed that I've met two incredible ladies, Wendy Stunt and Yvonne
Mhm.
Redden. And you know, we started connecting, we started talking to each other, and we were given different viewpoints, and we were saying, yeah, and I'll help you with this. And then it suddenly started growing, where we just started saying, well, this is great because we now can collaborate. We now have different skill sets, and them different skill sets have really enhanced what we're doing now as three collaborators. We still work individually on our own on a number of different projects, but we do come together, and we now we work a lot more closer, and we collaborate. So there's things
Mm.
that Yvonne would be amazing at, where with regards to copywriting and freelance journalism, and that's what she does. And then there's stuff that Wendy would bring to the table, which would be sort of the marketing end of it, and client based stuff that I would not see. And then there's other things that where I would bring to digital marketing, social media, graphics, and stuff like that, that I would see where they would go, oh, they'd have a vision in their head and say, I want to do this. And I go, yeah. And I'll automatically see what it is that we're going to be doing with regards to visually. And they go, I would have
Mhm.
never thought of that. So there's that collaboration builds them relationships. And by building that, it really helps. And I would always encourage people to collaborate on stuff, no matter what it is. Gone are with the days when knowledge is power and power is knowledge, and we keep it to ourselves, because I think them
Mhm.
days are gone. We have a thing called the internet, where you can find out any type of information. What you're buying is the person. You're
Yeah.
buying what they've learned. As I've
Yeah.
always said it, it it only might take you a minute to look at this. Oh, could you have a look at this? And it's only going to take you a minute. Yeah, that minute has taken me 20 years to learn how to do that. So I say to you,
Hmm.
that's what you're getting. You're getting the experience, and you're buying the person. You're getting that person to come on board and give you their interpretation of it. You know,
Yeah. That's,
you know.
and often what we can bring to the table is the idea of curating some of that content as well.
Mm.
So Alan, thank you today for coming on, and great conversation. Really happy to be able to talk about the power of connecting globally, and one day I am going to get to Ireland, and I am going to be seeing you in person,
We'll
and
go for a
hopefully we'll.
cycle. We'll go for a
Yes, we'll go for
cycle.
a cycle. Well, that's my friend Mary, who I'm actually visiting with. She's the one who got me into cycling, and she wants to go to Ireland, so that's going to be on our bucket list for sure to do. So, thank you for today, and thank everybody for tuning in today. Really happy to see some of the comments today and some of the supportive people that are coming out to learn all about the power of showing up. So, showing up is definitely something that helps us both professionally and personally to move that needle forward. So thank you, Alan, and
And
have a
thank
great
you.
day. And everybody have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.